Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Ask the Unfaithful. I am overjoyed that you're with us again today, but more than myself, I'm thrilled that my good buddy James is here as usual. How are you today, buddy?
Yeah, really fantastic today. It's a rainy day here in Florida, which means that it's 4 degrees cooler than the frying pan that it usually is.
Well, it's 90 degrees here in Austin, so it's not going to get any cooler for the next 6 months. So, welcome to Austin, Texas. Now, as we transition, you've got a big announcement that I know both the unfaithful and the betrayed are really going to be happy about. So, I'm going to pass it to you.
Well, thank you. So last episode, we teased that Ask the Betrayed is in process and it is ready to go. So next week, you can tune in at the little @ sign, Ask the Betrayed on YouTube. And hopefully we will also have it up on Spotify and Apple Music and all the other podcast platforms by that time as well. And being the producer, I've had the wonderful luck of watching the first one and doing the edits on it. And it's really great. They have really great chemistry. And I think that they're going to bring a fantastic, so it's really going to be helpful for betrayed partners.
Awesome. And it's really going to be a benefit for both the unfaithful and the betrayed. When you can understand more about why the betrayed feels what they feel, why they see things the way they see it, and how to really get into the mind of the betrayed. If you're an unfaithful, oh my gosh, why would you not want to watch these episodes? Because it'll be like a cheat sheet for you to understand why your partner, male or female, thinks the way they do, feels the way they do, and sees your actions the way they do. And so it's going to be a great tool on top of the other tools that we already provide for those who are in crisis, who are trying to heal. I know from me, and I know I share the same passion as you, for 20 plus years, I'll never forget my time in a field by myself, wondering if there was ever going to be any good that could ever come out of my life again. And
Yeah.
so, whether you're unfaithful or betrayed, there's so much that we're doing, as well as other people in the space, because these are like therapy sessions. These are like coaching sessions, free of charge. Every day you could watch a new one. So, with that, James, we're talking about something today that really can be incredibly insightful, and that is this: how does what we're calling malignant judgment undermine a fair recovery? So, lead us off into the types of judgment and what malignant judgment is.
So I'll say first that any kind of judgment, however we break it down here, erodes the relational foundations of emotional safety and mutual empathy. That's why we're really talking about it, because that's a huge problem in couples recovering from betrayal today. And so we're hopeful that this is going to be really helpful to both parties. Judgment, again, in whatever form, is a hidden saboteur, to be very French about it. It can be perceived. So how we think someone else is judging us. And the caveat to that is, but they may not be, or they may be. There's internal judgment, which is self-judgment, which pretty much is about shame, which we talk about a lot, and typically harsh. I don't know about you, but I used to basically beat myself over the head with a baseball bat. And again, may or may not be true, may have some elements of truth in it. But learning how to judge that and figure that one out is really good. The harshness, though, usually exceeds what the reality is. And then there's actual judgment. So this is judgment that is either made about us or that we make about someone else. So those are the three. And there is a fourth.
And that's,
Sorry.
yeah, I wanted to tee it up for you because that's my job, is just to tee things up. But really, there is what we call discernment, right? There is a wise form of judgment that we better have as unfaithful, but also as betrayed in terms of walking down this path.
Yeah. And that discernment, I'm not going to say it's easy, but there's a process to it. And it's really being able to, we'll talk about it more, but being able to take that step back and trying to discern between, wait a minute, is this one of those types of judgment that I need to see through or assess and make sure that's what's really coming at me or what I'm doing to myself? Let's look at malignant judgment. That would be condemnation, basically, based on identity or a perceived defect in the other person or ourselves. Like it's fixed, meaning if we believe it, it's unchangeable. It's emotionally charged and can be very shaming of either party. An example, an internal one, the self-judgment, I'm broken. I'm just broken. One that's perceived, she thinks I'm disgusting. He thinks I'm gross, which is really our own judgment of ourselves projected onto the other person. And we see it as coming from them. And then we ascribe it to them as being an actual judgment. Well, you think I'm disgusting. Well, that may not be true and probably honestly isn't. When we say something like, or think, oh, my betrayed is just crazy or just a blank, fill in the blank. Or if it's coming from others, you're an irredeemable piece of garbage.
Yeah.
The actual judgment by ourselves is onto the partner, like you're crazy, or from our betrayed onto us, you're irredeemable. That's a problematic judgment. And the problem with that is that then we're going to exacerbate the feelings. They're going to be bigger, then challenge them. So we have this choice here. As we discern, we can challenge the feelings that are coming up and try to make sense of them. Or if we take those things that we feel are coming at us or perceive are coming at us as actual fact, that can just exacerbate the feelings, which leads to what? Reactivity. And then we could take action based on those judgments and the wounds that they've created or hit.
And I think you nailed it earlier, right? There's wise judgment. How is wise judgment so different?
Wise judgment is basically a thoughtful discernment that's rooted in reality, in our values, and in self awareness. So we have this sort of clear eyed awareness, and that's going to guide growth rather than inhibit it like other kinds of judgment would. It kind of asks, well, what's true here? What's the impact of my behavior or even my judgment? What
Yeah.
needs to change? It holds us accountable on its own internally without destroying our sense of worth. So we could ask ourselves the question, what I did was deeply hurtful. So what needs to happen right now to rebuild? Or another way to take that, I made choices that caused serious harm. I can learn why I did it. I can take responsibility and become someone who's trustworthy. So you see that massive difference.
And I think every betrayed is clapping while they're driving or listening at home or what have you at self awareness. Because if we unfaithful could practice some real good self awareness, the whole recovery process would definitely experience some WD-40. We'll put it that way. Now, there is this one down trap that couples fall into. What is the one down trap?
The one down trap is basically the self judgment and all its forms of destructive stuff. Just a note, there's a one up as well, and we're going to talk about that. But both of them are traps that disconnect you as a couple. Why? Because the relationship becomes a hierarchy. One person is
Yeah.
good, the other bad. That's never going to work because then you're at different levels and you need to be on the same level in order to connect and relate. So let's talk about self judgment. Let's talk about the one down. The nature of self judgment is that we can have all these common thoughts, and you can probably think of a million more. I'm irredeemable. Everything I touch, I ruin. I'll never be worthy of love again. She or he deserves somebody better than me. There's an interesting thing about this. The thoughts can really feel true. The problem is they trap you in this self centered spiral. Nobody's going to like hearing that, but that's what it does.
You're
Huh.
absolutely right. All the betrays are going to love it because it's a self-centered spiral. And anytime we're self-centered and spiraling, we're focusing on us. My good buddy James Anir taught me that. Talk more about what we're focusing on.
Well, because the thoughts feel true, we start focusing on them and then we're focusing on our suffering and not the harm that we've caused. And so they block us from relational healing. Because if we can see the harm that we've caused, and I'm not talking like load ourselves down until it's unbearable, but I'm talking about this makes it relational because now I can be in the same arena, right? I can be with my partner and we can work on this. Here's another issue with self-judgment. We get into that self-centered spiral, but we can also mistake it for humility.
Yeah.
Like self-deprecation sounds humble, isn't, because what's it doing really? It's making us victims in
Yeah.
our own mind. So in truth, rather than humility, it actually blocks empathy and relational repair because it masks fear and avoids deeper work.
And anything that avoids the deeper work has to be considered blockage at the very most, maybe toxic, because it's keeping us from the deeper work to find out why we got here in the first place. Now, why is it malignant though?
Yeah, big word, right? Strong word. The reason why is because it's really a form of toxic, distorted self-condemnation that feels true. And yet it's deeply disconnected from reality. Like I can remember, Sharon looking at me like, what are you talking about, when I would say really nasty things about myself? Because it doesn't connect with what her reality was. And she was the one who was really hurt and was probably the one who would see me in the worst possible light. And yet even she was like, that's just not true. So that distorted self-condemnation really
Yeah.
becomes toxic, and it really keeps us in that spiral. Now, often it's rooted in childhood scripts, things that we told ourselves or that we learned about ourselves, which wasn't necessarily true in childhood, that became our narratives or our story. Those are things like love is conditional or everything was shame based. Well, that amplifies and exacerbates our internal reaction to whatever is being said in the now, because it hits those historical wounds. And so that can also keep us trapped in that sort of malignancy. Why is it malignant? Because frankly, it metastasizes. It shows up in every area of life. Just like everybody will say, drop the pebble in the water and there's the ripples.
Yeah.
It's metastasizing throughout. And I use that term even though it's really harsh, because that's really what it is. It's a cancer to yourself and it's a cancer to your relationship. The other part of it is it convinces you that you're not just someone who did harm to your partner, but someone who is harm. Like, I'm just a dangerous person to be around. And that isn't true. It's behaviors we can fix. That's a really hopeless place to be if you think you are harmed.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, given that, it erodes your capacity to take what is called relational leadership, which is actually just being proactive in the healing and helping your partner heal and asking for support and engaging in repair, because it stops you up. What's the point? I'm this awful person, and you get stuck in that. So why would you go into the proactive repair? Some examples of that would be, instead of asking what would healing look like, which is healthy, malignant self-judgment is going to say, I don't deserve to be part of that. I don't deserve to heal or be part of this relationship or the healing. Instead of, how can I reconnect with my partner today? It says, well, there's no point in trying. I'll just fail again, or I'll just do something wrong. I know I used to say that.
And I did too in spades. And for the unfaithful, it's a bit of a cop out, right? It's just that sense of, well, I'm no good. It's Eeyore, as some betrayeds lovingly call their partner. It's just, I'm no good. It's not going to work. I'm so stupid. I've already ruined everything. And it's just so it is so infuriating to the betrayed, because then they feel like they have to coddle or build up the unfaithful when the unfaithful should be building up the betrayed. I don't want to digress. Now, why is malignant self judgment so damaging, though?
Well, it turns the focus inward, which means where
Yeah.
isn't it on your partner? And it keeps us stuck in this self preoccupation. I'm bad, I'm this, I can't ever do that. I. So that disconnects us from our partner. It disconnects us from who they are. It limits our view to only the negative things and amplifies those. And worse, it sidelines our partner's pain so that we can't even see it for what it is, except simply proof of our judgment. right? Because there's the pain, I caused that, so I'm the bad man or I'm the
Yeah.
bad woman. And staying in that identification just sticks us and sticks then our whole relationship. So in that, it blocks relational empathy. Instead of asking how your partner feels, you're going to feel stuck in how you feel and about what you did. Sorry to say, that's very self-centered.
Yeah.
We can actually, within that, even though that's a harsh statement, we can actually say, well, I don't want to be there. I've been doing all these things, but I don't want to be there. So it can give us motivation to make some shifts, which we're going to talk about a bit later. The other thing that it does, though, that's so damaging is it encourages avoidance. It encourages stonewalling, even passivity. Remember how I always say passive is passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Fear of judgment or being judged keeps you from, or keeps us from risking vulnerability or even deeper conversations. Because, oh, those are minefields, can't go there. And it's also then for our partner, it's going to reinforce the betrayal wound because we're backing off. We won't connect. So somehow they're not good enough or they're not worth helping through the pain that we've caused. It'll also cause, this is an interesting term, emotional paralysis. And what that means is basically we're going to stop taking active steps towards repair because we can't engage in the emotions and the working through them. And then there's something that's deeply unfair, and that's emotional reversal, where then our partner ends up trying to reassure us.
And that right there produces such resentment and anger in the heart, in the mind of the betrayed, and rightly so, because it just makes them feel that they have to show up for us, which just perpetuates the problem of the betrayed saying, hey, it'd be great if you made some recovery work about me and the pain that I'm in. So, for those of you unfaithful who are listening, kind of going, man, you guys are just pinning me to the wall. Yeah, now we're going to talk about how to disrupt this, how to turn the ship. And the ship doesn't turn quickly, but if you can do these things that we're going to discuss, you can actually gain some ground pretty quickly if your heart is all in. So, James, how do they disrupt this self judgment?
First thing you have to do is reality check the thought. Whatever the thought is going through, you got to reality check it. One good way to look at this is what I'm thinking helping me and us grow, or is it shutting me down? There's a wonderful author, James Hollis, who says, is this going to grow me or diminish me?
Mm,
I love that word. I mean, what a fantastic author, too. If anybody likes Jungian authors. Then another one would be, would I say this to someone else who's trying to make things right? If your thought is going, I'm just a piece of garbage or whatever, would you actually say that to somebody else who's working at this? Like if they were your mentee or sponsee? Probably not, right? And then you can also then ask, well, how would I say it to them? So if you're replacing with a wise self-reflection, that would be something like, yes, I caused so much harm. And yes, I have a ton of work to do. But no, I am not incapable of change.
I love that.
Then we have to ground it in action because it's awesome to be thinking about this and working on that. Writing it out is really awesome. When we ground it in action, we are actually trading what's called identity shame. So, where our whole identity surrounds the shaming, we're trading that for behavioral responsibility, for making change. I did harm, and I can learn how to show up with integrity, presence, and care. Then, it's not done yet. We then have to practice repair focused language by being accountable. I know I broke trust here, and I'm committed to learning how to rebuild it. I want to show up in ways that can change that, one consistent step at a time. See how that takes away that negative impression we can have of, I've got to make this one giant switch that I flip to, you know what? I can make these small incremental changes that are going to matter. Then we focus on how our actions land. What does my partner need to see from me today that helps him or her feel even 1% safer? To do that, we can do one small relational act. Tell the truth, stay present, ask them what they need, and deliver it. This also tends to prove to ourselves that we aren't what our self-judgment says we are.
And none of this is easy, but it's accomplishable.
Mhm.
It is able to be done. I mean, it is easy to understand conceptually because you do a phenomenal job laying it out. And gosh, if I had you earlier on in my recovery, I probably would have gained a whole lot more minimum a whole lot faster. If you had you early in recovery, you'd have gained more minimum faster. But this stuff, conceptually, we can grab hold of it. Now, here's where we get a little bit sticky because oftentimes you alluded to it, the one up trap, when you feel and assume you're being judged by your partner. So, talk about that because that's a unique nuance.
So there's going to be actual judgment that we're going to hear, which is coming from trauma. It's a trauma reaction. That's why we're hearing it. And it's a very natural trauma reaction. We have to learn how to be a bit resilient to that so that we can remain present and help our partners heal. So there's actual judgment and then there's perceived judgment. And that's going to be what we are assuming is coming from them or what they think and not reality. Some examples of actual judgment that you might hear, these might be familiar. You're just a monster. You'll never change. You're just like your father. You're a pathological liar. You couldn't tell the truth if your life depended on it. Remember, they're coming from a place of trauma reaction and protective fear. And while they're painful to hear, it's really vital that you don't meet judgment with more judgment towards yourself or your partner. So, because it's easy to hear you're a monster. Yes, I'm a monster. I am just a monster. And there's nothing that can be done about that. And everything stops.
It's so true because remember, Unfaithful, the betrayed is dealing with trauma. The neuroplasticity of their brains has been affected. And so they're going to say some things that they don't mean. They're going to say some things they may not even remember. But
Yep.
if we're going to have relational leadership, we're going to have to also have emotional maturity and be able to own what we've done. Now, you alluded to it earlier as well. You talked about perceived judgment. So, what's the difference in how that plays out?
This would be interpreting disappointment, grief, or even silence as a personal rejection. So, an example could be, oh, wow, she's quiet. She must really think I'm a piece of garbage. Or he asked a question. He must think I'm lying again. But here's the reality many unfaithful partners feel as if they're being condemned when they're betrayed is simply a pain or setting boundaries. That's it.
Absolutely. We should say that like 17 times because I'm sure the betrayeds all were like, yeah, they think that they're being condemned when the betrayed is simply just expressing their pain, expressing their real life hurt, or maybe even setting a boundary. But why can perceived judgment be so, you used this word talking the other day, distorting?
Because it comes from unresolved shame and internalized beliefs. Really, we're filtering something through those. So, whatever is coming at us, whatever is spoken, it's hitting this filter. And then it's being changed so that we see it in that way. And that filter is beliefs about ourselves that have been internalized, could be internalized right now, simply from having betrayed. That can create that filter. So that's a nice one for the people who don't like to go back to what happened in childhood. That's my bailiwick, right? But that's the filter we run things through. There's this book, I think it's called 101 Pair of Glasses or Pairs of Glasses or something, which talks about, you don't have to buy it, just talks about that. Great. It's a great metaphor. What it does, though, is it triggers defensiveness in us or even collapse rather than presence or accountability, which is our goal. So if I get defensive, that's divisive. If I just collapse in on myself, like curl up, like I'm in shame, that also is basically very protective. So nothing can get in. That's kind of the point. So we have to reality check that perception as well. Pause and ask, is my partner judging me or are they expressing hurt? Is this about my past behavior or is it about how he or she is feeling right now? Then we get to use wise judgment or discernment again. Ask yourself, what's real here? What's really happening? What's really being said? What would be the most connected, responsible next move, not the most self-protective one? You're going to have to take a step back from big feelings at this point to be
Yeah.
able to see that. So that's no easy job, but I'm telling you, you practice it, it can be done, and you're going to get plenty of practice. So might as well use it. Then another thing is to clarify with curiosity. So if you're unsure, ask, are you needing something from me right now? Or do you need space to express how much this still hurts?
I may have said this in a previous episode, but I learned this, and I think it's a phenomenal way to diffuse a very potentially chaotic, alarming situation is stay curious, not furious. Any
Oh, I like
unfaithful,
it.
any unfaithful can get furious, like, oh, I'm just so mad. But that's our own shame, it's our own ego, you name it. But staying curious is like, so are you feeling this right now, or are you feeling that? Is this a time that I should do this, or is this a time that I should do that? Like, it's staying grounded, not reactive. As soon as we get reactive as unfaithful, check please, we're done. And so if we can stay curious instead of furious, we automatically put ourselves in what I love you describing as relational leadership. So as we wind down and give some tools, what are some things that they can do to really start to detox from this malignant self-judgment?
I'm going to make this on the easier end so that it's doable. Just track one moment of a day where you have some malignant self-judgment and work to reframe it. So, what self-critical thought did I have today? Then ask, what was the fear underneath it? How can I reframe that to stay grounded and connected? Some examples of a reframe might be, I am bad, to I did harm and I can learn from it. From there's no point in trying to trying imperfectly is still movement forward. So there's a sort of a perception check prompt here. Am I being judged or am I filtering through shame? Then you can also do a little wise judgment journal. What's true about what I did? What's untrue about what I believe about myself? And what do I choose to do today that builds trust? You could maybe do one of those on one day, one of those on the next day. I'm trying to make this as easy to do as possible. And then when you're interacting with your betrayed, practice a wise judgment check-in before you respond. There's this human thing when we interact that we have to respond immediately. We don't. We can take a pause. We can take a pause to think about that. Now, I'm not saying take a pause and say, yeah, I'll check back in about a month. I'm just saying, just pause in the moment and, as you said, get curious about it.
There's a lot of men and women who comment on our YouTube or my Instagram or what have you that'll say, yeah, I tried that and my husband or my wife did this and this. We get it. We know. But for people that are serious about recovery, for people who are genuinely interested in detoxing from this malignant self judgment, this stuff works. James and I have done this for 20 plus years. I mean, these are things that will work if your heart is in recovery work. If you're serious about reaching your betrayed, if you're serious about relational leadership, which is just you as an unfaithful going, hey, let's do this, or I'm going to try this, or I'm going to show this, man, don't you think that the betrayeds out there would kill for relational leadership in the heart and in the lives of the unfaithful?
Absolutely. And you know what? Incremental. And that part of our brain, I don't have to go into it. We use about 5% of our total capacity. What if you doubled it?
What if you
What?
just worked hard?
Oh,
What if you just got some caffeine and said, let's go do some recovery work? Good Lord, something is better than
right.
nothing, right?
Yeah, It's noticed, and it is noticeable because the results will happen. And all you have to do is be consistent. And it can just be what we said, just a couple of those little things to get you rolling.
And I think so many times we tell ourselves a story as unfaithful. And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's not going to work. It's just going to fail miserably. It's just going to this. It's just going to that. We tell ourselves a story rather than being able to go, like you would say earlier, where is this coming from? What if I tried? What if I leaned in? What if I was curious instead of always getting furious? If we would just simply say, I'm going to give it a shot, I'm going to try and really lean in. I think so many betrayeds would say, Hallelujah. Thank God that they made it about somebody else instead of themselves, right?
Without a doubt. Believe me, partners notice. Whether they express it or not is a different thing because there's all kinds of things that that's fraught with. But they notice. And over time, that builds on itself and that creates repair.
It's beautiful. Well, as we say goodbye today, I want to remind you that Ask the Betrayed will be coming out very soon. If you want to know where to find it, just shoot us an email at asktheunfaithful@gmail.com. We'll send you a link if you can't find it on your own. And we'd love for you to like and follow that page and subscribe to it. It's going to be just a phenomenal tool for both unfaithful and betrayed. If we can help in any way, if you're interested in finding out about an intensive, just shoot us an email. If you want to know about how to work with either of us, shoot us that email. We do answer our own email. We value every single one of you. We are overjoyed. And listen, on behalf of James and I and Sharon, we love doing this. This is something that we're incredibly passionate about. We care about helping you get healthy. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Ask the Unfaithful.